All right, let's get started with the BuyerTour program. I've got to tell you, I am so excited about this software because so many buyers, all they get is a simple listing sheet from the average real estate agent. But with this program, you can put together a comprehensive report that really gives the buyer all the information that they might need to purchase a property. And once again, the interface is so easy to use. All we're going to do is follow these steps across the top of the page, and down here at the bottom right, you'll see a little progress report as we go along as well. Now, step number 1 is the client information. This is pretty straightforward. I'm going to type in my client's name, their current address, city and state, and also, just as in the CMA lesson that we learned, the agent remarks is something that gets overlooked by a lot of agents. But what I'm going to type in here is, what is the buyer looking for? What's the dream home? Maybe they have a certain goal to find something under a certain price. This shows again that I'm listening to the client, and it's a great way for me to demonstrate that I am listening to exactly what my buyer needs. And I'm going to put all of that down here where it says agent remarks. It's also a good idea to give your buyer report a title, such as the Smith Family Buyer Report. Just something, again, where they get to see their name. All right, the next step, number 2, is the properties themselves. So here's the properties that, just as with the CMA, I found these by searching in my native MLS system that I'm already familiar with, and then I created the export file. Then you click down here where it says Import MLS Data, and you want to look for a file that's typically a zip or a TXT, what we call a text file, and sometimes it will even be what we call an ENB or an eNeighborhoods file. It depends on your native MLS. Once I've got the properties in here, I can again have the option to edit them. And this is important. If I'm going to be showing properties to a buyer, I want to make sure that the information is correct. Now, I'm going to give you something that's really my opinion, since I am an active realtor myself. Look at the Remarks tab. Here's my opportunity to go in and see what the listing agent remarks are. Because of the way that the market is going right now, and everybody knows that we have lots of properties that are under distress. We have properties that are short sales, for example, or maybe they're already owned by the bank. And you know what? I'm starting to see things in remarks that I really don't think are appropriate for a client to see, and I have the opportunity to go in here and edit that before my client sees it. So that's a big advantage to me. Once I've edited the properties on the tour, the next is the map. So step 3, I watch, and again, the Google map is downloaded. If I want to make sure that I remember each property that we're going to look at, I can also click on any one of these icons and it will remind me about that property, including the photo. Okay. The map is also useful for planning your tour, which properties are you going to look at first, and you can kind of plan your car route that way. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is step number 4, loan types. This is such a great part of our system. You know, it's not enough just to show properties and to get a buyer emotionally involved in that house. You have to pay attention to, can they actually afford it? In fact, if you think about it, that's one of the reasons that the real estate market is in trouble today, is because too many buyers bought homes they couldn't afford. Well, imagine if everyone used the neighborhood system. It would be a great help towards that. Our system is going to automatically calculate 3 loan scenarios based on a 10, 20, or other, you get to choose, % down payment. And then it will calculate for them their monthly payment. And it just gives them an idea, can I really afford the payment? A lot of times a buyer will go to a lender, and the lender will say, well, you can qualify for this amount. Typically, it's usually higher than they can actually afford the payments for. So this solves that problem. Now the next step, number 5, is your buyer's cost sheet. And again, just as with the CMA program, You can add an item or edit the ones that we have in here by default. Once you have your buyer's cost so that it's appropriate for your market area, don't forget to save, because you don't have to do this every time. Once you save it up to our system, you can use it over and over again. And if you happen to work in a metro area where you have many counties, such as Atlanta, the metro Atlanta area has 5 different counties you could be in with different costs. You can actually save a different buyer's closing cost sheet depending on which county you're in. And that's a very helpful feature of our system. The next step is to determine the show order. Remember I said how you would look at the map, determine which order is appropriate, and here you can either highlight and then move up or down so that the properties as presented in your report are the same way you're going to take your buyer out and then show them these properties. Present mode is, again, it can be used for 2 different things. It can be used by you to simply go over the property so you know them inside and out, but you can also sit down with your client before the tour, before you get in your car and drive them around, and you can again go over your qualifications. We have a nice talking point slide about the whole buying process. And then here's the tour analysis. We talk about how many properties we found, what's the highest and lowest price property, and some statistics, etc. We can study the map so they can see that this is really the area they want to live in. And then finally, we can go over the basic information before we set foot into the home. And then finally, the financial analysis. Now look at this. This is terrific. They get to see, based on a certain down payment and a certain loan scenario, what their possible mortgage payments are going to be. And of course, lastly, the closing costs, an estimate of the funds required from the buyer. Now, how do I put this all together? The last button is the Publish button. We're at the end of creating this fantastic buyer tour. I have multiple themes that I can select from. I also have multiple reports. Again, if you've watched the other training videos, our interfaces are consistent. If you right-click, you get to see what's in it. This is a list of pages that's in each report. Also, if you right-click a second time, you get to see how to use it. Very helpful. Once you've chosen your report, and once you've chosen your design theme, the only other thing you have to decide is how many listings per page. I can do one by itself, or one listing with the loan analysis. Now here's something interesting. We also have the listing with the buyer notepad. Very helpful. As you go out and look at the properties, the buyer gets to write their own notes on the report that you give them. Okay? So once I've chosen that, then I can either email or run the report. After I've run the report, I then I decide whether I want to print it at that time or save it as a PDF file, maybe perhaps to email to a client. I can even burn it to a disk and give it to them so they can have that with them in the future. And that concludes our lesson on the buyer's tour.